Councillor Nakato, Councillor, ladies and gentlemen of the press, as I say, today is a very momentous day here in the DA. We had a package for last year, and we have a package for this year. Not all will be left in the last year, but of course, everything that will be rolled into this year is what we are going now to unveil. And I don't want to take a lot of your time. But as a person, I want to welcome you here as the Secretary of the DA. Every day the DA grows stronger and stronger. And I want to take this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to invite the one and only, the Right Honorable Mathias Mpuuga Nsamba, the coordinator of the DA, to take this podium, take this opportunity and speak to you, the press and the country at large. Right Honorable.
DA, new day, new way, new day. Thank you.
Can we share this platform that I can read my document? This can go down. Just share it. We'll agree to share this space proportionately. Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year to you all. My brother Henry has ably welcomed all of us, and he has ably made the wish for today. But because of the matters that arise in our political space on a daily basis, I'll begin with what I construe as a relatively small matter, because it's not mundane. It's a matter that has been in our space, albeit coached by the actors in different languages, albeit presented differently in different spaces. But I want to speak about it in my initial statement, so that it does not arise either from your questions or any other interaction. Namely, that at the beginning of the year, in his end of year message, the general at the helm of the state, General Museveni, informed the nation that it is his intention to offer directives to the banning of bail and bonds where necessary. And I'm here to say this, that Mr. Museveni is not saying anything new. He's actually been implementing it. You have been reporting about so many citizens that have been in jail for more than 4 years, activists in prison without going to court for more than 2, 3 years, 4 years, including those released at the court martial in suspicious legal circumstances. So did you have to make an announcement anew for that?
You're also aware that there are so many citizens that have been in police cells, including those that have been maimed in police cells, and the police officials, authorities are aware of this, so there's nothing new. The only issue Museveni was reminding the country was that he's still at it. And now that we are going into a potentially electric political period, he was probably reminding the political actors in all spaces that he's probably going to heighten his stronghold on the state structure, including the police, but also extend his dirty hand into the judiciary. It was a simple reminder. So there was nothing new from us that have been around. You are aware that myself and the colleagues in Parliament for the last 3 years have been pursuing justice for so many young activists that are rotting in jail, including the missing for the last 4 years. So if any one of you thinks that that was a new statement from Mr. Museveni, I'm here to inform you that he was just reminding the country of what he's been doing. And therefore, there was nothing new. And therefore, for us as the DA, part of our resolve in the next couple of months and subsequently is to make sure that such impunity and abuse of processes of court and state is stopped. That's all we are here to call upon all and sundry to follow, to demand that General Museveni stops henceforth the abuse of state power and stops his interference with the work of the judiciary. Because the judiciary is not an extension of the executive. The judiciary must be left to perform its duty independently. But the judiciary and judicial officers must not succumb to the pressure from the state, because they have a constitutional mandate to discharge justice without regard to undue interference from wherever and from wherever. I thought that should come at the beginning of my address, so that we do not have contradiction that what our views are. Our views are that nothing has changed. It's the same thing we are fighting to change, to ensure that impunity stops in our midst. I want to embark on the gist of my communication today to the nation. Over the last 1 month plus, public space has been awash with what the DA is about. Initially, there were conversations inconclusive as to what I had tabled for Parliament as electoral and constitutional reform. And today I have invited you to share a compressed version of these issues, such that nobody misconstrues our intentions. Initially, I want to state that, like I said at my last briefing to the nation, that we had written to majority political actors, platforms, informing them of our intention to interact. A few have not yet received these letters because offices are closed for the festive season, and beginning today we have embarked on transmitting this communication, and we hope we'll be able to interact with these different political platforms, including civic or citizen platforms in the form of civil society organizations, to discuss the content of our intentions at the DA. We have received a nod of positivity informally from some of them. We're going to formalize these interactions, and we shall be informing you as the fourth estate, share the sentiments and the views of the different actors with the rest of the nation. Now, the most important issue is what is the DA's national transition and reform proposal about? Because I have seen media commentators not necessarily misrepresenting, but probably misconstruing what this was. You know, these are new concepts to majority of the generation here and in most media houses. So you hear commentary totally different from what we are talking about here. And I blame no one, because issues of reforms, transitions are alien issues to our space. We are used to processes where the outgoing is the incoming, and therefore you have no conversation about the possibility of a reform or a transition. And how can I blame a media practitioner who is 30 years or 40 years, who has never seen a transition, who has never seen a change? So these are alien concepts, and I am here to share with you a simplified, a condensed version of these issues that you can inform the country is what exactly we're trying to do, and re-energize and rekindle the spirit of this nation before it collapses on our backs. And our proposal at the DA is aimed at forming a basis for a national conversation, national discussion, and debate and dialogue on the future of Uganda. And note, these are our objectives. Other people can add theirs, but these are our objectives. They are essentially 6 in propagating the idea of a national transition and reform processes. The reform processes we have talked about variously. It involves reforming a number of laws, including amending the national constitution. But to break down the principal 6 objectives: 1, to ensure key constitutional, electoral, and administrative reforms that should be effected before the next general election. Our intention is to make sure that before the next general election, potentially in January next year, we undertake critical legal or critical constitutional and political reforms before we are enthusiastic about participating in the next election. And I'll expound more on what that is about. 2, to ensure the conduct of non-violent, free, fair, a framework capable of providing verification for the consequences or the outcomes of an election. 3, to buttress mechanisms that guarantee peaceful and smooth transfer of power from one leader to another. Apparently, there's no such mechanism because we do not have a Presidential Transition Act. We don't have a mechanism that guarantees what happens to those who leave power. People have on power, sometimes there's no framework to insulate them from the crimes they have committed. We want to have an arrangement of guarantees, an arrangement of ensuring that those who leave power actually don't leave the country. So if they have committed crimes against the citizens, there must be a framework of understanding the nature of crimes. Are they crimes in personam? Are they state crimes? So where's the framework? 4, to campaign for the implementation of a national reconciliation and reparation plan. Gentlemen and ladies, so much has been going on over the last 40 years under the leadership of Hon. Mathias Mpuuga. We surely know that there are so many injured citizens, there are so many affected citizens, and somehow the political actors believe that they can be ignored. We don't think so. A nation that ignores the injured is a nation of fools. I don't think we are. We cannot afford the luxury of ignoring citizens that have been injured over time. So what will happen to citizens whose children have disappeared under the auspices of Hon. Mathias and these people? Should we simply say they melted away like ice? We need a framework of truth-telling so that the country can heal from the effects, from the ravages of bad governance as we usher in a new epoch of leadership that appreciates the values of our people, that appreciates the values of human rights, the values of association and disagreement. So it's our belief that this is lacking. That's why disagreements make people get gray hair, because there is no framework for resolving them. If you disagree, you take the fastest flight when the regime changes. We cannot build a nation that kind of arrangement. 6, to buttress mechanisms that guarantee continuity of peace, stability, progress, and prosperity for all Ugandans. We all know how power has been abused in this country. Now, at this stage in our country, who is the guarantor of our national security? Because the national security system has been abused by an individual. Who is the guarantor of our elections? Because all elections have been tinkered with. As people gear up to go and participate in the next election, who is the guarantor of a free and fair electoral process without turning the election into a ritual of sorts? We hesitate as DA to encourage citizens to simply go into a ritual and simply look on at their tear gassed away, and then they wait for iteration, and then say new day, normal stuff. It's not a normal situation. We believe that we must have guarantees because the current security framework cannot guarantee national security. It is repressive, it is partisan. We need a conversation to the guarantees of our security, the guarantees of our electoral outcomes, and how this can be done. I can understand these are really mundane issues. They are alien concepts because we are used to being ruled over like animals. We are saying, you know, we are human, and therefore there must be full participation and understanding of why we participate in politics. Otherwise, we can agree to become a basket case. Okay? In the DA, we are saying we cannot be part of the basket process. We need a very clear process that can guarantee that the outcome of an electoral process is going to be consequential, positively, to the lives of our common peoples. So essentially, those are the 6 objectives for which we clamor for reforms and a transitional framework. I thought that must be made very clear to all. Now, who are the stakeholders in all this? Because it's very important to understand that who are the stakeholders? You and me belong to a multiplicity of platforms. We have political actors, we have civil society actors, we have citizen platforms, we have cultural institutions, we have religious bodies, we have senior citizens. So Uganda has bona fide owners. This is not a land of no one. It's not a no man's land. So these stakeholders are the ones we need to be part of this conversation. I have heard people say that we are talking about very nice things, but Genome 7 won't accept. Who tells you that we are here to massage Genome 7? We must compel Genome 7 and his people to listen to the people. We must compel to listen. Whoever thinks that our job is to take some massage oil to him, no. We are saying all must demand for these. The media, civil society, culture, religious institutions, senior citizens must demand that Genome 7 listens. It's not his father's estate. It's a bequest to all of us. And therefore we have a stake in how this bequest is being managed. And therefore a demand using multiple voices is legitimate. That's what we are here for. To mind these stakeholders.
New way.
New day. That these demands are legitimate. We're not trying to impose our views on anybody. We are simply saying this can't continue as normal. Now, comrades, we have set ourselves as the DA a framework we want to share with stakeholders, a form of agenda, an agenda of sorts, because we believe, and honestly believe so, that all these objectives may not be achieved in a single goal. They are multiple, and some of them are multi-stage. They have a multiple stakeholding arrangement. Some of them will have to require the high and the mighty to climb down their high horses to listen. And they may require pep talk. Some of them are simply scared out of their skins. And therefore we need a cascaded framework, a form of agenda from one issue to another that will compel them to say, hey, I think we are being considered. The idea of politicians backing at each other must stop and agree on a framework that can sustain this nation. I have had politicians vowing to crush each other. Those who want to crush each other, please go at State Square, we shall watch you crush each other. But we have a nation to save. Okay? If you want to go for to box, can box. But for our country, we are making very clear demands. So in our agenda, cascaded, the first one is to go for key constitutional, electoral, and administrative reforms. I have spoken about that. And you're aware that already I have put through Parliament 8 bills for which we are going to demand for space before Parliament. That is our first on the agenda because the elections are on the horizon, and therefore there's no amount of waiting that we can do. The Electoral Commission, in its lackluster shape, has outed a roadmap, and that roadmap must feed also into the agenda of reforms. I have explained before the nature of the electoral reforms and the constitutional alignments that we desire. Probably I'll speak about them a little bit later in brief. The second item on the agenda is the National Reconciliation and Reparation Program. The third is adoption of a consensus devolution model. I've talked about reconciliation and reparation. But the issue of adoption of a consensus devolution model is a power sharing model across the country to replace what we know as centralization that has failed us. You come from communities where centralization actually is a dead animal. It's a fossil, dead and buried, you know. So then, if you want to enhance the sharing of national resources and the delivery of services, what do? We are proposing a devolution framework, call it a federal framework, where power across regions is going to be shared and decongest the corrupt center and take the resources of how it works. But where it works, the same number of people are represented by the same number of MPs, councillors, etc. You are aware that in Parliament, we have members of Parliament that came to Parliament with 4,000 votes, and their constituency has 6,000 voters, and that is a constituency. In my constituency, Nyendo, as a parish alone, has over 60,000 voters. That's a parish. I am aware in Nansana, for example, a single parish will have about 100,000 people. My brother, the Honorable Segona, represents 500,000 people. I mean, what kind of framework of representation is that? So we need a serious conversation. And that's why, for example, you have had contradictions on the implementation of the parish model. So a parish, there are parishes that have 1,000 people, juxtaposed against Nyendo with 100,000 people. So how do you give those parishes the same amount of money? That is fraud. So we want to overcome fraud in the sharing of national resources. And part of that is to review the framework of representation at all political levels. I don't think this is rocket science. There are challenges in its implementation. Can we begin with particular levels and then increasingly cascade, increasingly review until we have a final model? We can do hybrid. We can start with a particular level and say, for constituencies, we shall use proportional representation. Probably for affirmative action, we will do that. So there must be a starting point. There's no need for denial of the existence of the skilled nature of representation. That's the nature of our conversation that we want to see. Of course, I've talked about the Agenda 5 to organize a free, fair, and consequential election. That is a must. The nature of conversation is what we shall expound when we meet our colleagues. Then 6, peaceful and smooth transfer of power from the NRM to the next government. Surely, it's not true that the next government is the NRM government. If it's the case, then there's no need for us to talk about election in this country. the next government could be in any party. That's what a democracy is about. So for you to say that the next government is NRM is to say that we are all stupid. And therefore, we participate in these activities as a ritual. So the conversation as to any government is capable of coming, any party well structured, well organized, in a free and fair process can take over the reins of power is what we want to be a part of as the DA. And in the transition arrangement, because part of the problem, actually the biggest problem, is fear of the transition, fear of change, fear of transition. We want to share with our colleagues that in the national conversation we talked about, there should be an agenda to enact a transitional act. Remember, Comrade Dr. Hon.Mathias in the 9th Parliament attempted to present a presidential transition act, a bill for a presidential transition act. It did not even get leave of Parliament. Because the whole idea of change sends cords down people's spines. We want to have people understand that change will happen. And they start to the presidency, and immediate actors around the presidency. That probably will give some people an opportunity to rethink their insistence on turning this country into a pariah state. We want a National Devolution Act. I talked about devolution and the death of decentralization. These are very eminent provisions we want to see in the kind of amendments we want to see coming. So essentially, the reform process would include constitutional, electoral, and administrative reforms. I talked about the constitutional reforms, hitherto, in our earlier briefings, here and at Parliament, that the key constitutional reforms we want to see include the restoration of term limits. Very key. I have heard comrades say that please, term limits should also come with the age limit. Perfect. Can we have a conversation on how those two feed into each other? Do we need both? Do we need one? Probably some of you are young people, and nobody can blame you. But those of you who are around during the conversation in the CA times, I was an HSC student. And in the legislation of the Constitution, I was in the university first year. But I remember so well the conversation around the age limit and who it was targeting that time. My senior colleagues here know that the age limit at that time in the Constitution was targeting an individual. Yes. So are we as a people going to go for legislative retribution and revenge? Or we can go for a higher, a bigger issue, which is term limit. When we go term limit, in our view, you control both the young and the old. But the conversation as to the return of age limit is important. Let's have it and then see whether we need both or one of them. So mere dismissing either or, for me, is an act of cowardice. If we want to change this country, leaders, political leaders and actors and pretenders must just have the courage to speak about very controversial issues, including the ones I've mentioned. But simply running out from them and saying, no, that's not possible. No, for us, we're just ready for an election. Which election? So we would like to invite serious political leaders to rise to the occasion, run away from their cowardice, and speak about these issues with courage. That these are the issues that we need to see the acted upon in these times. I talked about the critical amendments in the executive, dropping a vice president to go for deputy president. I talked about those issues here too. I don't want to bore you with that conversation. I talked about the downsizing of parliament from the current bloated 500 and 50, 59 or thereabout, to reduce the size of parliament by a third. Can we have that conversation? Is there any sane citizen who can say that that parliament can even be enlarged? In the current framework, actually, we are destined to expand the size of parliament by an extra 50 MPs. I want to inform the country. that there's an ongoing process to elect parliament with an additional 50 members of parliament. For me, that's a crime against citizens. So can we have a national conversation as to how this parliament can be downsized? When we discuss devolution, we cannot be discussing devolution and expansion in the same statement. Okay? We agree, if we want to devolve, then we must have some MPs can become councillors in their areas and influence local issues. I'm not trying to downplay their politics. No, you're not a place of quality councillor, you're a leader of your people. Some MPs can become governors of their communities. Who knows that his guarantee is going to be in the next parliament? So I'm speaking generally about myself and everyone else. That is the kind we need from our leaders. Not simply, appetite to participate in elections regardless of their consequences. Time has come when we, without contradiction, speak about the possibilities and impossibilities. So I'm now telling you that if nothing is done, the next parliament will be 600 and more. Remember, the structure of our economy is increasingly becoming narrow and narrow. So we have increasingly more mouths to feed and a lot more appetite than the resources at our disposal. So must we expand, political offices, or we need to really expand the framework for such provision in the country? So I have mentioned the acts that are put before Parliament, including the Presidential Elections Act for amendment, the Parliamentary Elections Act for amendment, Law Government Act for amendment, the political parties, and the other Organizational Act for amendment. Critically, what we are targeting as the DA in the Political Parties Act, the way it was framed, it was actually enacted in bad faith. Political parties, for example, are almost incapable of forming a registered coalition. I have heard comrades in other political platforms talk about their willingness to work with the others. You cannot register that kind of arrangement. So what was the spirit of enacting that law? We are saying that law is due for amendment to make it possible for platforms to work together in a registrable legal framework. That's our intention. So that we do not have scattered multiple, groupings that are inconsequential and incapable of changing our electoral and political platform. I think I talked about the other electoral, the laws. I talked about amending the Electoral Commission Act with a view to doing two things. One, to allow for the voting of diaspora citizens. There are over 2 million people voting. So the EC can use our missions and the embassies as polling stations for both registration and voting. Two, the voting of prisoners. Yes, prisoners. It's not that you lose every right when you're a prisoner. And we have, we are saying that the only prisoners that cannot vote are those on the death row. Because the presumption of law is that when you're on the death row, you are literally decommissioned as a living person. So the rest must have their rights respected. Luckily, that subject has been litigated upon, and in 2021, court hammered down a decision to say that the Electoral Commission not making provision for the voting of diaspora and prisoners is a violation of their constitutional right. Therefore, it's not really requiring of us to go to the moon. To have the EC Act amended and make provision for the voting. Prisoners can be registered in their prisons where they are domiciled, and the diaspora at the embassies and missions where they live. So we thought these are issues we need to clarify. Then, of course, I talked about administrative reforms. This refers to amending and administering reforms to key state agencies and arms of government. The judiciary is due for reform. On another day, probably I can share with you the feel I have on how the judiciary should be reformed, including an environment where judicial officers can be voted by the people. If you want to be a magistrate in Masaka, people of Masaka should vote on you to be their magistrate. They should be able to see a sense of fairness and understanding in you to be their magistrate. They should not be imposed by the government in power everywhere. The government in power the president can appoint Supreme Court judges, probably judges of the Court of Appeal. Our view is that time has come to have a conversation on how other judicial officers beyond apparent courts can be voted by the people. These are very broad ideas that need a complex conversation. We are from stakeholders. We believe that the educational reforms are long overdue. Reforms in health are long overdue. Why don't we have national health insurance? For example, small nations have insurance. Why can't citizens be treated by the state? Citizens that have terminal illnesses, cancers, heart patients, be treated by the state. These need reforms. So if the NRM thinks that we are a growing economy, why are we growing in numbers and not growing in service? So we need a conversation. So these are not really very far issues from us. We need reforms in agriculture, in energy, in mineral resources. For example, we all know how mineral resources are being siphoned from this country and benefiting a few. Some of you in the media space have reported on people siphoning gold, siphoning rare earth, siphoning, all sorts of minerals. You know better than me probably. Who is speaking about this? In Parliament, you remember me demanding for the payment of taxes on gold and how I was suffocated on this debate. And members of Parliament did not care about this matter. They thought it's a small matter. Those are your MPs. So we need a conversation on these resources and how they benefit the nation. At the DA, we are not cowards. We want this conversation on the floor for citizens to make their input. Of course, there are other serious issues on immigration, land management, that we want the citizens to participate in. You heard the other day our brothers and sisters, the Banyarwanda, complain about discrimination. So which kind of state, which kind of nation is not capable of telling who are their citizens that can actually acquire national IDs and passports? That you must have a petition in Parliament. So at what stage do you determine one's right of citizenry? So this is a conversation that we must participate into as citizens. So friends, I have talked about our reform and transition agenda. And I want to repeat that when all this is done, we want to say 6 things in a cascading order. 1, a framework for the national transition. 2, establishment of a national transition council. 3, a national transition agenda. If you are going to transition, what's the agenda? 4, leadership of the National Transitional Council. So we want the country transition. So who are the leaders that people listen to and understand and respect? Not everybody in the suit and with the tie. So we want to understand. We must have a framework on who's going to contribute to this arrangement. Then 5, a framework for implementing outcomes of the transition. So if you agree, so how are we going to implement the transitional issues? Because there's mistrust across the spectrum, because the citizens do not trust so many people, including their leaders, we must have a framework. Probably we need to understand who can chair a transitional framework in a divided country like Uganda, in a cultural and ethnic political melting pot that we are. Can we get an external person? Are we going to get a Supreme Court judge? Are we going to get a religious leader? Are we going to import somebody probably neutral and therefore not aligned to our division to chair a council to transition? From where I sit, from my vintage position, we are a nation on the threshold And therefore, denial of our existence, denial of our situation is the biggest danger. For anybody to imagine that all is okay, because the Electoral Commission has provided a roadmap for the next election, and then you go and bring out your best suit for nomination, you are an enemy of this nation. We need to have a conversation fast. There's so many positions for people to stand, and there are so many for people to lose. So the hurry in I want to stand, the hurry in this is mine. And we are saying the probability of you getting what you want is higher with the reforms and there's a high propensity of you losing in the current framework. For those who are very enthusiastic about the next election, I'm only warning you that please don't go for a ritual. Let's make some demands, critical demands, and then agree on the nature of their implementation. So coming today, I thought I should break down these small issues for us to understand them with clarity, so that the question that will arise will address the nature of these issues I have put across, without any import. Don't import issues that we have not talked about. That's our space, that's our view. DA? New way. DA? New way. DA? New way. New day? New way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Right Honorable will not take his seat. We just need to invite a few questions, and after the questions, he can be able to give us the other local version. They might prefer to give it in Nyakore or Lusoga. It will be his preference. Can we have a few questions? Yes, one, you just tell us your name and media house. One, let's have a couple of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's take those ones.
Which you have talked about highlighted.
And your name,
Isa Chigongo, I work with Channel 44. You have talked about different amendments or your area of focus as DA. But the question is, does that time favor you?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Lini Kachigundu, I work for Whisper High, an online media platform. My question is, you're planning to table those bills, but as you know, the opposition does not really have the numbers. And normally the NRM comes up with one stand. Do you really think you can achieve what you plan? Thank you.
My name is Annette from UBC. Mine is just a gender weekend. According to the spokesperson of the National Consultative Forum, many political actors have been coming up with research proposals, but along the way, they have been frustrated by the NRM because of numbers distance transmission. How set are you to force this and make it to go?
Yes, and one last one, then takes that round.
Amaina Walsa Moses, Usoga 1 radio station. Right Honorable, ku nsonga ya medical insurance, because when ningirira Uganda abantu kyasinze ino okubaavuwaza kufuna treatment, ensonga ya medical insurance nungi ino kubanga omuntu atunda ekintu kyakuleereke 10 years okufuna treatment for 1 month emulago. Ensonga eno nungi eri abannayuganda nga ife, aye kusinziira ku gavumenti eyanakinyamalira ensonga eno esobola okugira mu nkola.
That one was a tough one.
Thank you. My name is Hasif Sechuga. I work with BBS TV. I thought it was important to ask in English. You may not have time for asking that. My question is about, you have good points that are talking about the reality and what is going on. You pointed out issues, challenges you face in the recent elections, but it seems other political parties of the opposition are taking classes of choice. We are only remaining with a few months to the real game, and it's only you preaching this kind of sermon, and political parties seem are seemingly not concerned about this. Aren't you Is it your concern that maybe you are carrying across to people that don't care?
Yes. Can I answer this first? Okay. Mr. Chikongo, 44 time frame. Yes, I am alive to the constraints of time, but I'm saying that we also am not oblivious of what time has. But I'm saying all these electoral and constitutional reforms may not be achieved in a single go. I explained earlier, I think in an earlier address, that some of the constitutional reforms, because the Constitution makes provision for 3 possibilities of amendment. In Article 260, we can amend the Constitution with the Parliament, 2/3, and then a referendum. That some issues can be amended through parliamentary resolution and then a referendum by the people. Which is why one of the amendments I'm taking in Parliament is that on polling day we should have a referendum ballot paper to answer to key issues that require a national referendum. Because the excuse has always been that we don't have resources to conduct a referendum. We are probably the only nation that is incapable of responding to citizen concerns for over 20 years. There are so many lingering questions that require citizens to answer back. By the way, including the question that General Museveni wants to make his person like bail. If he has issues with bail, let him take the question of the people. They will answer him back. You have problems with bond. Let him go to the citizens who are affected by the inefficiency of government. How can you say you want to draw with the bond when you don't have prosecutors? When you don't have magistrates? Who speaks about that? So I think General Museveni is tired, really tired. Let him take that question to the people through a referendum to get the answer he wants. So, we are alive to time. In 261, we can amend the Constitution as Parliament, 2/3, and local government, 2/3. That time we have. Parliament has enough time with local government to amend those areas that require Parliament and local government. Then in 262, Parliament alone, the areas that require Parliament alone. So Parliament has time. It's only clumsiness and ill will. So if goodwill prevails, the question of time is not a big issue for all the intended amendments. It has for some, but we also will have a remedy in terms of cascading them. And then the outcomes can be implemented by the next government. I'm strictly talking about governance. Okay? Then Mr. Chigundu, that we might fail in our bid because of the numbers. Yes, we are not blind to the numbers. We are saying we shall talk to the numbers. It's not true that all members of parliament from the NRM are blind. I have spoken to very decent men and women in the NRM. And they are very concerned about the future of this country. All we need is to have a warm conversation. You remember the debate in Tojikwata Hall? Remember how we were able to swing in numbers? Of course, at the end of the day, it was not swung by parliament, by the military. Those who were around. I still believe that we can overcome the past and rethink afresh about this country. I'm very aware of well-meaning members of parliament from the ruling party that want this conversation to be part of our national polity. So the numbers, yes, but the numbers can be talked to, and then we decide for the good of our people. Annette, the almost same question, the NSF, of course, the National Constitutional Forum is a constitutional platform which is dead. It's dysfunctional. In fact, the issues we are discussing should have been, forwarded by the NCF. Where are the outcomes of their meetings? Is it allowances? They sit. We vote for them money in parliament through the electoral commission. What are they doing? Let them come out to complain and say things are not working, and we disband them. Then we can know they are non-existent. So we understand your frustration. That's not enough to be frustrated. Act on your frustration. See? For me, giving up is not an option. And nobody should ever hide behind frustration, not act on duty. We are inviting them to act on their duty as a constitutional body. Mr. Waiswa Mpuuga, yes, I can understand your frustration. And I'm inviting you, now that you have a very important platform, to speak to citizens to raise and make these demands. In the 10th Parliament, there was a conversation about the possibility of a national medical insurance. But that conversation was dropped and excuses were brought. We can compel any government in power to implement that as a priority. If you're not prioritizing public health, people's health, education, and the services, basic services, then what's the priority? So we believe that this can be, even smaller nations with leaner budgets like Rwanda have a national insurance, health insurance scheme. So it's a question of demanding. And for us on our side as the DA, that would be our electoral platform, part of our electoral platform. National insurance. And we cannot apologize for demanding for it. Mr. Shunga, yes, what other parties are doing. No, I am concerned, but I'm not worried. Concern is that they must be alive to the reality. Concerned that what they are doing is grandstanding. Concerned that they have been part of the past, and therefore they must be alive to the present. That does not scare me from reaching out. We are talking to all those platforms, even those who are saying they're ready for the next nomination. Saying, no, before you iron your coat, please listen. It's a rainy day. Will you first put on a rainy coat because you ripped? Even your newspapers will be torn by the rains. Can you deal with the bad weather before you raise your appetite for the next election? That's the message you are putting across. And we are putting across humbly to these platforms. Okay? This is not about us. We have a stake, just like anybody else. And we are trying to constitutize, to raise the awareness of colleagues and different platforms to say, this is the way to go about this business. Probably some of them are new to this. I can understand. At least I am beyond excitement. I have been into this. Therefore, I can speak without contradiction to my worries and the concerns about the future of this country. If we made this as our political culture, this is my scare, this is my worry. I thank you. If there are any lingering questions, I'll gladly respond and we take leave.
Yeah, we are going to take and please, members of the fourth estate, don't mind asking in other languages, because we shall take after this round. We'll give us the local version and then we call it a day. Honorable, as you are speaking, Honorable Kakembo Batekama joined us. Is right here, and Mzechuanuka just joined us. He represented in Parliament long time ago in Busoga. He was a powerful member of the DP. He's an independence struggle. One of the persons who fought for our independence, and he's still with us. Let's have 1, 2. Yeah, 1, 2, and then we call it.
Thank you so much, Honorable. My name is I work with Galaxy from Galaxy. I would like to know your view about the character of one of your allies, Mr. Patrick Murana. He's in trouble, he's ever in trouble. As your ally, aren't you worried about this? What is your say about this?
Yes, please.
I really apologize for coming back. My name is Asif Sechu, working with PPST. I'll borrow a quote of Thomas Sankara, who said that for every political negotiation, there must be a threat to a listener. And to a listener in this case, President who, according to your plans, you are suggesting that he should give you an ear so that you can address these issues. what then will happen if nothing happens? What do you have to make him listen to you? What do you have to make him sit and listen to your concerns and maybe be ready for action? Because it seems like there is nothing if he doesn't listen.
Very interesting. Any other questions?
Any other questions? All right, let's take that round and then call it.
My sister Zainabu from Gaxe, the character of one of our lives. Yes, we have so many allies with multiple characters. Fortunately for us, we are alive to their situation, which is why, as leaders, we cannot ignore these young people. Like I said earlier on, these are young and talented people that have been ignored by society. In fact, their exhibition over the weekend is a confirmation of the fact that they have been ignored, and therefore they chose their own way. I'm here to inform you that we are not going to give up. We are not going to give up on this one and others like him. We have a history of rescuing his ilk, and some of them have turned into very important citizens. You will not be the first to be rescued. No, we have rescued many of his ilk. Some have even assumed very important national offices. So please, be assured that we are not going to give up. We fully understand his challenges. That's why we endeavor. When we say we are going to work with him, we are not promising to work with him on an event. No, we're not preparing a festival with him. It's a wrong haul because they have been at it for years. They are a lost generation. You cannot change a generational tide in one day. I want to assure the nation that we are not going to give up on these young citizens. We owe them a duty of care to make sure that they actually overcome their current troubles and be noble citizens. That's when they benefit from their latent talent. I commit. Mr. Sechunga, what's the threat? To which I agree with your assertion that, that's why I'm saying that we are not here to collect gallons of oil to go and massage the ego of one General Museveni. We are here to collect to summon the collective spirit of the nation, demand from it. Okay? And like we promised that beginning this month, we are going to be out to talk to citizens. We're not going to incite citizens. We are going to remind every citizen of their duty to demand for a free and fair electoral process. That's what we are going to do. And that's what we ask of ourselves and our other colleagues. Please do not reserve your energy for 2026 to demand for Nisari Abakama to declare you. Use that energy now to demand for a free and fair electoral process. That's what we are telling colleagues at different political platforms, that please, that energy you are saving for campaigns, first use it, because that campaign will be inconsequential unless you have used part of it to demand for a fair electoral process. That's when you have the proposition and possibility. Otherwise, the propensity of this being a ritual is quite high. So I agree, and therefore we must raise the threshold of risk and threat for those with power, including speaking to their own personal fears. We must understand that sometimes people that have power, and especially that have abused power, have fears. When this conversation becomes a reality, these fears must be spoken to, and therefore we should be able to evolve and exit. We are trying to oust a well-fed cat with all attendant, power around them. We must speak to their worries and probably office it. So I believe in the power of reaching out to people, regardless of the sentiment they hold against those around them. We are not necessarily out to speak to our friends, but speak to our opponents and show them a higher goal about this nation. probably it will be easier for me to give the Uganda version through questions, because I don't think I'll give a complete narrative, but I'll give a précis of the key highlights. Okay.
DA,
New day,
DA,
new day,
new way,
new day,
new day,
new way,
new day, DA, new day, new way.
Pastor ne banyabo njagala okubaaniriza ku mwala waffe luno olw'amawulire olusoose mu mwaka guno 2025. njagala kulwa bannange abali ebuya eno n'abataliiwo obakulisa omwaka omukadde n'okwebaza bye tuyiseemu. mubadde balungi nnyo tuyambako okutuuka eri eggwanga okutuusa ebyo ebirungi bye tukoze, ebyo bye tukayaniddemu n'ebyo bye twannaba kukaanyaako. olunaku lwaleero njagadde njogere ku nsonga enkulu ezitukuŋŋaanya nga Democratic Alliance n'ekisinde ekitaba bannabyabufuzi n'ebibiina by'abannansi ebyenjawulo, bano abali eno n'abataliiwo bwe tukola nabo si bantu bagudde mu kibiina kimu, waliwo n'abatalina kibiina, waliwo n'abakyetegereza, waliwo n'abali mu bibiina ebyenjawulo, naye ng'omulama ffenna guli gumu ogugamba nti ng'abakulembeze ng'abannansi tulina okubaako bye tutuukako. naso ne bagenda mu kibuguumirize ekyakalulu akajja aka 2026. tulina emiramwa 6 nga Democratic Alliance kuba kitulowooza nti enkolagana yaffe nga tuwuliziganya nkulu nnyo okutaasa eggwanga lino okugwa ku kabenje. ebyafaayo byaffe si birungi nnyo, ebyafaayo byaffe bijjudde obutabanguko bw'ebyobufuzi nga twafuna obwetaaze mu 62. obutakkaanya mu byobufuzi si katuubagiro era si kaleega bikya, naye obutaba na busobozi kumalawo obutakkaanya obwo nga kyabujega nnyo era kyabunafu. ekiseera kituuse buli alowooza nti eggwanga lino liri mu kutambulira mu muwaatu omukyama okusitula eddoboozi ku nsonga 6 zetwalambika nga Democratic Alliance. esooka okulaba nti wabeerawo ennongoosereza Sseddugge oba Namutaayiika mu ssemateeka, mu mateeka agafuga ebyokulonda, ate n'okubeerawo enteekateeka ennuŋŋamu mu ngeri obukulembeze gye busobola okuva ku gurupu emu ne bugenda ku gurupu endala gye twayita transition. ekyokubiri okubeerawo obweyamu, okwewaayo n'ekisuubizo nti tujja kuba n'akalulu nga kabwenkanya, tujja kuba n'akalulu nga buli omu alina omukisa okukeetabamu, ate nga tewali akeetabyemu ng'agenda agamba nti okugenda ngenda naye era manyi sijja kukola ki, sijja kuwangula oba sirina mukisa. ekyokusatu okuteekawo enkola ekakasa bannayuganda nti wajja kubeerawo emirembe, akalulu akawedde ate nga n'obuyinza bukyuse. kikulu nnyo ekyo. ekyokuna okuteekawo enkola ennuŋŋamu ejja bamukwata mundu mu kulonda. ebyafaayo byaffe ebyo byobufuzi byeŋŋambye bitali birungi nnyo, bikulaga nti olwabaddewo okukyusa obuyinza obwo bukyusiddwa bamukwata mundu. abatuuze bannansi tabeerako na mukisa kukyusa buyinza nga mukwata mundu tebaliiko. tuze byafaayo ebyo si byabantu bagunjufu bwenkaniddeawo. ebyafaayo ebyo by'abantu abalemereddwa okwogera ku butakkaanya bwabwe. Ekiseera kituuse twogere kifo ky'amagye byobufuzi bya Uganda. Ekyokutaano, okuteekawo enkola engazi ekomyawo obwa Sseruganda n'okuwuliriza abo abakoleddwako ebikolo bino n'okubazza n'abalina okubeetonderwa n'okubaliyirira bayirirwe nga amawanga gonna mu bujulivu bwe gakola. N'ekyomukaaga, okuteekawo enkola esibiddwa obulungi etuwa ekakasa eggwanga nti emirembe n'okugenda mu maaso bannayuganda bonna bajja kuganyulwamu nga tuganyulwa abantu bamu. Kuba tukimanyi bulungi nti ebbanga lyonna twali betugamba nti amagye g'eggwanga egajja okuwa ekisuubizo nti bajja kubeerawo emirembe, naye nga bwe tulaba gakozesebwa akakundi k'abantu bamu. Tewaliiwo garanti nti amagye gajja kukuuma gavumenti eddako, ekyo kinajja ddi tulina okukyogerako. Tewaliwo garanti nti alyoka ebyokulonda kajja kusobola okubeera nga kakubiriza akalulu ak'amazima n'obwenkanya, ekyo kyogerwako ddi. Ensonga zino tulowooza nti nkulu kadi ze tulina okwogerako ne bannaffe bonna abava mu bibiina ebyenjawulo, abatalina bibiina, abataka abakulu mu ggwanga lino, mu bitundu byonna eby'eggwanga, ebbanga lino eggwanga lyabwe. Ekyo kigenda kubeera kikulu nnyo mu mwaka guno gwe tutandise, era nga bwe twasuubiza ebibiina ebisinga tubiwandiikidde, ebibiina eby'obwannakyewa tuwandiikidde, institutions ez'ennono abatannaba kufuna amabaluwa gaabwe lwakuba ndi babadde mu Uganda ne batandise okudda. Tulowooza nti mu sabbiiti ey'okubiri y'omwezi guno tujja kubasobola okuwa eggwanga ekifaananyi ekituufu. Tunatandikirawa bannaffe abamu twogedde nabo mu mbeera ey'obwa Sseruganda, era beetegefu okutuwuliriza byoko bitukkaanyaako. Tekigenda okuteekako essira mu mwaka guno okulaba nti wabeerawo ekivaamu nga kyamuzinzi. Ezo z'ensonga enkulu. Ensonga ezikwata bwe tugenda okukola nazoogerako dda. Amateeka galina okukyusibwa, agamu nateekayo dda mu paalamenti, ne mu kwebuuza kuno tubadde twogeramu ne bannaffe ab'enjawulo, waliwo n'ebiteeso ebipya byongedde okujja. Bye binaabanga ddala tumaze okubisunsula obulungi n'obikenenula, tulowooza nti bijja kuvaamu ekiwandiiko namutaayiika ekinaayongera okugaziya ebyo twagala bikyuke nga bannayuganda. Kasooka njogera ku nsonga eyasoose nayo ebadde mu ggwanga w'ennaku nga 23 eya General Museveni gye yagambye nti ayagala poliisi n'ebitongole ebiramuzi obutawa kweyimirirwa nakakalu poliisi eri abazzi b'emisango. Ekisooka, Mwami Museveni talina kipya kye yagambye era kyekiriwo. Tubadde nammwe nga tunoonya abantu abaabuzibwawo, abantu abali mu makomera amazeeyo emyaka 4-5 nga tebawoza, emyaka 3, n'abaateebwa mu ngeri etategeerekeka mu kkooti z'amagye, n'abakyaliyo mu mbeera ey'ekimpatiira nga Dr. Besa. So n'olwekyo kyayogerako takisaba busabi, atandika dde okikola. Obuvunaanyizibwa bwaffe omugamba nti kyakola kikyamu era omuyimiriza obutakikola. So ku bimu bye twagala byogerweko, Mwami Museveni baba alowooza nti ekyayagala kikolebwe akitwala eri abantu bamubuulire. Situkkiriza kuba kalulu ku ddembe lyaffe, era tulowooza nti kyabunafu ng'eddembe ly'okusaba okweyimirirwa eriwewa ssemateeka. Naye bw'aba alowooza nti akyagala, y'ensonga lwaki tugamba nti walina okubeerawo enkola ey'okuddamu okuteesa ku ssemateeka w'eggwanga nga ne bannansi beebuuziddwako. Ensonga ezimu ne paalamenti yo tatisobola kuzimala. Paalamenti Mwami Museveni gy'alina ababaka abasinga obungi, ensonga ezimu ng'ensonga ya bondi ne beeyi tesobola kuggwerayo, kubanga nsonga nkulu nnyo ekwata ku ddembe ly'abantu ery'obwebange. Bw'aba ayagala agitwale mu bantu, twamuwa obudde ateekeko akakiiko Constitutional Review Commission na buli kati koogerwako bwogerwa nga bacwezi tukalaba. N'olwekyo ebyo byakiguumaaza, tulowooza nti tebiyamba ggwanga lino. Twagala ensonga zino zidde mu lukale, abantu bazoogereko, basalewo eggoye ku bebyo bakkiririzaamu ne batakkaanyaako n'abakulembera. Ekyokubiri nti tosobola gamba nti oyagala kuggyawo mukisa gwa kweyimirirwa na bukakalu ka poliisi nga tolina abalamuzi bamala abasookerwako ne mu kooti enkulu nga tolina bawaabi ba gavumenti bamala omuntu asobola okumala wa wiiki mu poliisi nga tannaba kugulwako musango naye nga akwatiddwa nga tebannaba kusalawo musango gyogenda mubunaanibwa avundire eyo n'ensonga endala nnyingi nnyo ezikwata ku ddembe ly'abantu emyaka obulwadde n'ebirala n'olwekyo Mayi Museveni ensonga eyo agyesonyiwa agiveeko kuba terina gye mutwala era ajja giwangula ekyo nyagadde sabanziremu ebibuuzo byammwe ku nsonga ez'enjawulo kijja tuyamba
okunzabana numbers zisobola kukyusa aliteeka
kituufu kimanyi bulungi ne bannange tuli mu DA n'ababiina ebirala bakimanyi bulungi nti mu palamenti ensonga ezinga ge zirina okuggwera NRM ne Mwami Museveni ne basingayo omuwendo gw'ababaka naye era nkimanyi bulungi ng'omubaka wa palamenti nti ababaka ba palamenti aba NRM bonna tebalowooza kimu era wali ababaka ba NRM bangi betwogedde nabo nze ne bannange abaagala tubeeko okwogerezaganya ku nsonga zino eggwanga balyagala si kituufu nti bonna bonna ba yesmen gye bali obungi bwaffe tubumanyi bulungi naye ensonga nyingi zisobola okutuukako nga tuwuliziganyiza situli mu kutya kwa numbers tulina kutya kwa kutegeera nsonga
Oweekitiibwa ensonga y'akadde akasigaddeyo kabaffe balinga oba
obudde butono kituufu naye era butumala tubanga okukola ekituufu okukola
ebibuuzo bina
okwongerezaako kibuzo kyange kinatambulira mala emyezi nti ekiseera kino eggwanga lituuziddwa akakatito olw'okuliisa ababaka ba palamenti nga nabamu butuufu tebavangamu yadde ekigambo kusanya kigenda kuggwako nga tutegeezezaako nti otegeddeko nti wandibeera nga waliwo enteekateeka z'abakulu mu gavumenti okwagala okwongeza ku muwendo gw'ababaka n'ababaka abasukka mu 50 tuyinza okuyingira ekisanja kijaga tuli babaka 6 kiki kyemugenda okukolawo gwenga omukulembeze tumanyi okutula lukiiko olw'enkizo mu parliamentary commission kiki kyemugenda okukola okulaba nga mumatiza ababaka bannamwe kuba kino kuyisibwa kirina kuyisibwa mu parliament mugenda teekawo mbeera ki okulaba nga muziisa kino ensimbi y'omusolo ereme kufatta
omunomukooti yamazeyo ekibuuzo kye
kibadde
nze Adolf Semata Gugude TV. Oweekitiibwa bwe baali batongoza DA bategeeza nti omukago guno gugenda kusimbawo abakulembeze ku bifo eby'enjawulo naye singa enteekateeka yammwe eno ey'okukola ennongosereza mu ssemateeka tezikolebwako kimwe nga mmwe kyemuba what is your way forward eri DA?
Right honorable, nze kibuuzo kyange kiri awo ku nsonga y'ebyobulamu kubanga tugeze okulaba sectors zonna ziraajana omuntu aba nga alwadde kubasondera okujjanja ku Cancer Institute omuntu ebintu byakoze emyaka 10 abatunda okufuna treatment mu mwezi gumu ku wiiki emu.
Oweekitiibwa ensonga y'amwana
Manuserowooza abuuza kiki kyetugenda okulawo nga DA ababaka bwe bana bagenda kweyongera tubakolere ki tubawe obutwa tukole ndowooza ekyokukola si muwendo nti emugattako emu zibeera mmeka naye mugattako emu ziyinza obutabeera 2 ng'obaze mu beesi ziyinza okuba nga ansa yanjawulo tulowooza ndi waliwo akabenje k'amaanyi wetwogera ku bugazi obugazi ebyobufuzi gye bikulirako tebikwatagana na kukula kwa byanfuna ekivuddemu ebyobufuzi bufuuka binyuunyunsi eri ebyetaago bya bannayuganda n'olwekyo okusalawo omuwendo ogw'essalira ogw'abantu kampa ekyokulabirako wano mu Kampala State Council bagenze basala ku bagaziya bakansala be bakiikirira era bakansala abamu tebajja kuddamu kwesiba bitundu fudde okubanga mukigoberera bulungi obanga osala ku State Council bakansala bagenda kendera ndoza bagenda kusala ku bakansala nga 20 kiki ekigaana okusalako ababaka ba Parliament ndoza kubanga ekigendera ky'okusala bakansala kiki ekigendera ky'okwongeza ababaka ki ensonga eriwo si under representation ensonga eriwo is misrepresentation bw'oŋŋamba nti omubaka omu akiikirira abantu 6 ate omulala 6,000 kibeera kizibu nnyo so n'olwekyo kyetuva tugamba eno mu DA ensonga ya saizi ya Parliament eyogerweko twawadde ne formula twawadde enkola ey'okusalako Parliament ekitundu kimu kyakusatu 1/3 of Parliament era nituwa ne formula esobola okukola formula eyo si yakweyagaliza tulowooza nti bwe tuba tukkanyiza ne ku nkola gye twayogeddeko ey'okugaba n'obuyinza eya federal gite devolution ng'eteekeddwa mu nkola abakulembeze abamu ab'ebyobufuzi bajja kugenda mu regions bakulembere regions ebyobufuzi ebimu bigendeko mu bbali kikola bulungi nnyo naddala nga tutaddeyo ne ssente ezikola endala okusinga okubeera nga tulina wano oba nka kiyite ki mu lulimi olutuufu senta ng'erina omujjuzo gw'ebyobufuzi obutalina kyamaanyi kivaamu muganyiro guvaamu sebo ababaka kyenjogerako si lugambo enteekateeka zigenda mu maaso ez'okwongera ababaka ba Parliament bali mu kusagala constituency endala ne district muziwulira ezijja ne municipalities zijja ndowooza okkiriza bulungi nti wentuula ndi Sekanyolya kati obulawe bwenjagala okunogera eddagala nga bukyali bannayuganda babe nga basobola okugamba nti ekyo nedda anaagala okiteeka mu nkola bamubonereze mwami Semata twagamba nti DA ejja kusalira bakandida yes kijja kusoboka singa embeera y'ebyobufuzi eraga ekyo kyetwagala ku ssaawa eno sisobola kukubuulira kyetujja kukola ne tujja kukyogerako obudde nga butuuse twagala kumala budde bwaffe nga twogera ku bitajja kubaawo nga tewaliwo bisobola okukola ebiriwo ku ssaawa eno ekiriwo kwogera ne bannaffe tusalewo ekikulu ekyokukola kiba kya lukitiizi nnyo otandika okwogera ku bye tutya ennyo ku ssaawa eno nga DA ndowooza nti ekiseera nga kituuse regionale mu biseera ebigere tujja kuba tuteeka ku minzaani embeera eriwo tusalewo ekyokukola ndowooza kyekisinga mu byobufuzi kusinga okubeera nga emitwe gyaffe tukitadde ku kasonga gundi ayagala wano gundi ayagala wali watabeerawo ngaokola ki ngaokisalamu ogwakabugu ndowooza kikulu tuteke tugende ku nsonga engazi tusalira amagezi ensonga y'ebyobulamu binayogeddeko ng'ekimu ku bikulu byetwagala bigerweko mu administrative reforms mu nkola ye mu nfuga mu kujjulula enfuga n'ebikolebwa abakulembeze nkulu nnyo ogamba nti bannayuganda ekiseera kyayitako dda okubanga buli munnayuganda alina yinsuwa ndoza kyekyoluganda ng'alina yinsuwa naddala okuyamba abalwadde abalina obulwadde obw'olukonvuba kubanga basobola okujjanjabwa gavumenti si buli munnayuganda batono nnyo asobola okutwala omulwadde e Nairobi asobola okutwala omulwadde e India ne medical board nga bweri n'okuyamba bannayuganda balina obwetaavu yabanene tulina omuntu avudde waffe Masaka mu Nnyendo munnakayiba talina wagenda medical board kusaba kuyambibwa twala mukadde we oba genda kumujjanjaba yennyini so eddagala mu ekyo liri mu National Health Insurance nga bwe nagambye egenda kubeera nsonga nkulu nnyo erifa aba DA mu mbeera yonna eneebeerawo mu biseera ebyobululu ensonga ya mwami Mulwana nga bwe nagyogeddeko mwami Mulwana ne banne baana ba Uganda balagajjalirwa era embeera ebatambulirako tesobola kugireka tukwatirwako nnyo era ensonga lwaki twagamba tugenda kwewaayo okulaba nti tubayambako siigwe tunaba tusoose okujja mu mbeera yalimu mukimanyi bulungi ffe abali eno ne bannaffe abataliiwo nti waliwo bannaffe abalala abaali mu mbeera nga ya mwami Mulwana nga tozanga babi n'okusingawo naye mu kwewaayo ne mu kugamba nti abantu bano balina kye bagatta okubeerawo kw'eggwanga walina okubeerawo okwewaayo okw'enjawulo okulaba nti bajja mu mbeera gye balimu tewali n'omu ajeegomba ensonga lwaki twagamba nti tulina okwewaayo okuyamba abaana abalina ebitone abaalagajjalirwa ne bakola bye baagala ebibanyumira ekiseera kyatuuka tukubagamba nti ebibanyumira tebinyuma naye beetaaga okuwa obudde era okugamba nti tujja bayambako twagamba nti tujja kukola omukolo gw'okubayambako twagamba tugenda kubeerawo okwewaayo wagenda ku simuliro mutte ku bigere tusooke twogere ku mbeera gye mugenderamu mu kwetaba mu kulonda embeera gye mugendamu nkulu nnyo n'okusinga akalulu kennyini tubagamba nti amaanyi n'obudde bwe mutadde mu kunoonya esuuti esaanidde tugateeke okuteekawo embeera ne bwogende mu kinu naye ng'embeera nti osobola okugenda mu kalulu nga kakuwa ekifaananyi nti ogenda mu kikuba ky'abantu bagunjufu so si bintu byakukola byaye
Kwanga Buganda yamanyibwa nnyo eggwanga lyaffe okwetooloola ensi zonna twesimye nnyo olwa Buganda yaffe ekitiibwa kya Buganda kyava naffe tukikuumenga. DA New Way, DA New Way, New Way, New Day. Thank you.
Mulinde semakula mulinda
kati awo kitegeeza n'okulaba
baba tebalaba tekano bango tawanyira bwere naye wampadde kamu katugezeeyo okemu ne bulungi tekamakinga na bibyo